The biggest thing I have noticed between the individuals who perform well in selection or perform well in whatever pipeline they're pursuing and the individuals that struggle is their ability to push past and to continue working far beyond that honeymoon phase. Anybody can set a big goal and work their ass off for a couple months, but very few people can set a big goal and do the things required of them on a consistent basis over the years it's going to require to get to that level of performance that is going to enable you to be successful. Welcome to the Infinite Grit Podcast. This is the show for those preparing to earn their place in special operations and other elite tactical careers. We break down the training, mindset, and strategies required to get selected and continue performing long term. These are proven principles to help you build the body, the mind, and resilience to step into the fight. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Infinite Grit Podcast. Hope you are doing well, getting after it. Today, we are going to be discussing a little bit about what I see with the candidates or between the candidates that crush it and the candidates that struggle or maybe even never go to selection. And before we dive into it, I want to talk to you a little bit about my experience training for SFAS because there's going to be some traps in that differentiating point that I fell into in the front side of going to selection or when I really first started training for this environment. Now, I joined the Army at 18 years old, and all throughout high school, growing up, my stepdad was a former Green Beret back during the Cold War, so I grew up listening to his stories, and this led me to knowing that I was going to try out for Special Forces at some point in my military career. So when I first got to my unit, that is my first unit, which was the 160th. I was stationed down at Fort Huachuca, kind of a detachment from the 160th. But when I first got there, I committed to the goal of training for Special Forces Assessment and Selection. I'm in the Army now. Like my next, I just achieved this goal. My next goal is SFAS, getting there and absolutely crushing it. So like most young men who have a big goal or decide to go out and train for SFAS, I thought I needed to burn the candle at both ends. I thought I needed to do way more than what is actually required of you to make consistent progress. I had my unit PT in the morning. We would usually start at 6 a.m., finish at 7:15. I would go to the gym for an hour and lift on top of that. I would go back to my room, grab food, whatever, work throughout the day, and then in the evening, I would do another session or swim or whatever. I was rucking every weekend, doing ruck runs, and we were expanding out the distance there at Fort Huachuca, got up to like 12 miles and absolutely crushing them on a consistent basis. And the problem with this was I could not sustain it. I got like 3 months in, my Achilles started hurting, my hip flexors, I was having all kinds of hip flexor issues. I was frustrated, I was burnt out. And because I had in my mind that I needed to do all of this stuff to be successful in selection, when I couldn't maintain it, work picked up, whatever, when I couldn't maintain the 2-3 workouts on a daily basis, I thought there's no way I'm going to be successful at selection because I can't even maintain these 3 workouts per day. When in reality, I was just trying to do way too much. And what I refer to this as is the honeymoon phase. Whenever we set a big goal, whether it's going Special Forces, whether it's starting a business, whatever you are pursuing, there is going to be kind of a honeymoon phase of motivation on the front side of it. Usually it's like the first 3 to 5 months of really working towards that goal. But what we often underestimate is how long we're going to have to be in the trenches or maintain consistency to see those results. So when motivation spikes, we try to fill all of our free time every second of the day with the things that we think we need to be doing. And then when motivation inevitably falls, that is when we start to struggle. And because we had that perception or that belief that this is how you get ready for this environment, we start doubting whether we can actually do it. When in reality, there's only a couple things on a daily basis that we can actually do to continue making progress. On a physical performance standpoint, it is train. We need to train once a day, ideally 6 times a week, and then outside the gym, provide our body with the nutrition or the raw resources and the time to recover and make the adaptations physiologically possible. There's no shortcutting this by just adding 2-3 sessions in a daily basis, unless you're an individual who that is your full-time job and you don't work and there's no other energy expenditure outside of that. But in 99% of the cases, that is not the case. So one training session per day with a structured progression that is aimed to getting specific stimulus over a period of time. Outside of that, there are things we can do with mindset, waking up on time, adhering to the promises we make, reading, learning from the experience of others, talking to people, working on our interpersonal skills. Like, these are all things that aren't necessarily directly tied to selection prep, but will help you perform in this environment. And I bring this up to say that the biggest thing I have noticed between the individuals who perform well in selection or perform well in whatever pipeline they're pursuing and the individuals that struggle is their ability to push past and to continue working far beyond that honeymoon phase. Anybody can set a big goal and work their ass off for a couple months, but very few people can set a big goal and work and do the things required of them on a consistent basis over the years or months it's going to require to get to that level of physical fitness or level of performance that is going to enable you to be successful. So this time of year, July, we usually see a dip in that exercise compliance, or we see a dip in the consistency for a lot of guys. And often this is attributed to traveling around, 4th of July, a lot of time on the lake, whatever. Completely fine and completely, I'm not saying like don't have a life. I encourage you to have a life. But we want to continue prioritizing the work. And what I mean by this is, I'm sure that we can all agree that there have been times where we didn't do what we said we were going to do, myself included. And a lot of times we can have those open loops or that stress accumulate when we don't do the things that we know gets us closer to our goal. And this often manifests over weekends. And let's say we, started in the gym Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we kind of fizzled out towards the end of the week. We said we were going to catch up on the weekend. Then we went out with our friends. We started fishing, hunting, doing all that stuff. And we didn't get those sessions in. We kind of feel that stress, or we feel like there is a gap between what we said we were going to do and what we actually did. So what I recommend doing is, instead of trying to stack these, an unsustainable amount of things in your day, pick 2 to 3 things: the workout, nutrition, maybe a mindset thing that become your daily non-negotiables, and then plan them out, get them done. And beyond that, you can give yourself a little bit of time to relax without that guilt hanging over your head of not making progress towards your goal, because these are the few things that get the most results. It kind of goes back to the Pareto principle, which is 20% of the work gets 80% of the results. And that is the exact same case with physical performance, with preparing for selection. There's only a few things that we can do on a daily basis that's going to yield the most results. So what I recommend to you guys is, on a Sunday or over the weekend, sit down with a calendar in front of you. I use Google Calendar, but you can use, bullet notes, bullet journal, whatever you are using, and plan out the day and the time you're going to knock out your daily non-negotiables, because that is going to put you in a position to where you make these promises and they're not, over encumbered or an unrealistic amount of things, but you can adhere to them. And the more we do that, the more we establish a plan and then execute on that plan, the more we develop our ability to do just that. And it's going to transfer into environments where we have to perform when we're stressed, when we're tired, when we're burnt out, when we're sore from the day before, when we just woke up from a 2-hour nap that is the only sleep we will get in the next 48, 72 hours. Like, adhering to the things that we say we're going to do now is going to set us up to do that when times are stressful and everything is a little bit more challenging, both physiologically and mentally. So understand that if you are in that first 3 to 5 months after you have committed to going special forces, and you are, you have a high level of motivation, you're going out there and knocking out all these workouts, understand that that honeymoon phase of setting a goal will come to an end. it will start to lose its allure. It will start to fade a little bit and become a little bit more normalized, especially as we dig into it and we, understand more of what the environment is and what the training actually looks like. I promise you it'll happen. But the thing that separates those who succeed and those who don't is their ability to continue working when that motivation dips or when that honeymoon phase ends. So next thing I want to talk about is knocking out or improving our ability to do pull-ups. So if you're new to the podcast, kind of the way we work it on a weekly basis is we have a main topic. Some of the things that we cover are books that I'm reading, things that I'm seeing inside the community, challenges that arise, and then we go into a little bit of methodology and we wrap up with a Q&A. So for this week's methodology chat, we are talking pull-ups, and I wanted to break it down into 3 different categories. We have the category of the individuals that are able to do 0 to 4 pull-ups, so 4 pull-ups or less. We have the individuals who are able to do 5 to 9 pull-ups, and then the individuals who are doing 10 plus pull-ups and they're working more towards those elite numbers. If you are in the first category, so you are working to get your first 5 pull-ups set on broken strict pull-ups, the biggest focus as kind of that beginner phase is building the strength and making sure that you're doing so with proper form. I can't tell you how many guys I see go out there that aren't engaging their scaps properly, aren't engaging their core, swinging, kipping, all that stuff. And it's not going to help you long-term to get the most number of pull-ups. So some things that we can be including on a weekly basis is assisted pull-ups, it doesn't matter if it's a band assisted pull-ups, a buddy assisted pull-ups, machine assisted pull-ups, whatever. We want to have resistance or some type of assistance to enable us to go through that full range of motion with proper form. So keeping our shoulders down, our scaps activated, and that is going to build that muscle memory and start building up the muscles or the correct muscles to enable us to maximize that vertical pull. So we want to gradually over time reduce the amount of resistance that we're doing. This is why I always talk about tracking and how tracking is so important for what we're doing. If you're doing machine assisted pull-ups that has, the weight, our goal is to reduce the weight or the resistance or the assistance that machine is providing over time. So if we're not tracking it, then we don't know what we did last week. We don't know where we should be at, and it becomes very challenging. And that's how you see guys get stuck just doing assisted pull-ups forever. So we want to track that, and we want to incrementally decrease that to challenge ourselves a little bit more. So I would have probably 3 to 4 sessions for these individuals. One of those sessions can be a little bit more volume based, so high assistance on it or a high level of assistance on the machine, working that quality form, going through that range of motion. And this is going to stimulate a little bit more hypertrophy, which is going to build the muscles in the first place to help us pull down the road. Then we can have lower, volume. So like 3 sets of 5 reps with as little resistance or assistance as we could use. And this is really focusing on the strength component of those pull-ups. And then as always, we don't want to overlook or skip the horizontal pull movements, which is going to help build that mid-back, that muscle in general. So it could be a machine cable row, it can be a T-bar row, barbell bent over row, dumbbell bent over row. We want to have some type of horizontal pulling movement to make sure we're doing that. We want to track our numbers. We want to reduce them over time. Once you're able to do like 1, 2, 3 pull-ups, I'm a big fan of transitioning to singles or including 1 session per week that has singles inside of it. And what that could look like is you could do, 2 sets or 3 sets of 5 reps, and all of those reps are going to be singles. So you mount the bar, you get a, dead hang position, engage your scaps, pull up forcefully, getting your chin all the way over the bar, controlling the negative 2 to 3 seconds on the way down, hopping off the bar, shaking it out for 10, 15, 20 seconds, and then doing that again for 5 reps. And then take your 90 seconds to 3 minute rest between those sets, and then do a couple more sets of singles. As you continue to do that, that is making sure that we're pulling with proper form, we're building that strength, that explosiveness. You will see your numbers climb pretty rapidly, more than likely. Once you get into the 5 to 9 range, this is where we can start adding a little bit of resistance. So I would have 3 sessions per week, one of those being volume based again. And this is when we're working more to failure. We don't necessarily need to work to like a true muscle failure, but we should be working to the point where we can't do perfect reps anymore. And that could be categorized as a form of failure with those particular sets. Then with the other 2, we can do one weighted. So we could start introducing weighted pull-ups, working 3 to 5, even if it's 10, 15 pounds, staying in that 3 to 5 or 3 to 6 rep range, and really, building up that weight over time. So again, tracking your weight here, and now we're going the opposite way, as opposed to when we were doing the resistance. Now we want to add weight incrementally over a period of time. Then we can supplement with lat pull down. We could do additional pull-ups, keeping it sub maximal. So we can do EMOMs, things like that to drive up the overall weekly volume. But the biggest thing I see with guys who kind of get plateaued in this 5 to 9 rep range area is trying to do pull-ups every single day. Pull-ups every single day, if you're keeping them sub-maximal, can be fine to kind of grease the groove, so to say. And a lot of times, if you're a beginner with pull-ups, you can get away with doing that because you're not going to be able to do enough volume that creates a ton of damage to those muscle fibers. So it's not going to be as prolonged of a recovery process. As we're able to do more and we can actually do more damage to those muscle fibers, doing them on a daily basis, especially if we're taking all those sets to failure, is going to lead to a plateau 9 times out of 10. So do not do them every day. 3 to 4 per week. One of those sessions we can take them to failure. The other one should be working on strength and keeping it sub-maximal, meaning not taking them to failure. And then if we add an additional session that we're just doing, some additional pull-ups to work on technique, etc., then we don't want to take it to failure. We want to keep all those reps nice and clean. And then after you get up to, the 10 plus mark, it becomes kind of the not maintenance, but a very similar structure. We just have to consistently adhere to it over a prolonged period of time. It will take someone a fairly significant amount of time to go from 12 pull-ups to 20 pull-ups. It just takes the time to build up the muscular endurance and the strength. In the first 2 categories, 0 to 4 and 5 to 9, we are really focused on building that strength overall. As we continue to progress, we still want to include things like weighted pull-ups, circle pull-ups, little variations in there, 1.5 pull-ups, etc. But we do want to start driving up that muscular endurance, working on technique, working on disengaging ourselves on the way down, kind of using gravity to our advantage. So I would still be running 3 sessions per week with 10 plus pull-ups. One of those sessions being more volume based, and that one we can take longer rests and extend these sets out, taking them to about 3 RIR or reps in reserve, getting within 3 reps of failure, not necessarily getting to the point of like true muscle failure, but failure in breakdown. Another set could be heavy weighted pull-ups. So now we're still working that 3 to 6, 4 to 6 rep range, but now we're starting to add some serious weight to it. And then that third one could be the variation. So whether we're doing circle pull-ups, 1.5 pull-ups, things like that are fantastic to do. One kind of caveat or note I want to make in the 0 to 4, another thing that is great to do is negatives. So if you jump up to the bar, if you can't do 2 pull-ups or 4 pull-ups or whatever, you can do sets of negatives. So jump up to the bar, you start with your chin up top, and then you let yourself down nice and slow on the way down, and that's going to assist you very well. But typically what we like to see is 3 to 4 sessions on a weekly basis, and then varying the type of sessions that there are. Do not go out there and just go do max pull-ups on a daily basis. I promise you, you will get to a point where you're hitting a plateau, not continuing to see constant progress. And with all of this, you'll hear me say it 1,000 times, and we can only make progress with an amount of volume that we can sufficiently recover from. So if we go out there and we're crushing ourselves way too much and we're never giving our body a chance to recover, then we are hamstringing our progress overall. I gotta get some water. All right. This week, we have a couple questions from the community. So I'll dive into those. And if you guys ever want to submit questions, you can either drop them down below in the comments or you can shoot me a message on Instagram, and then we'll run some Q&As on the Instagram story as well. So make sure you're following me over there. So first question is, how would you train to familiarize yourself with the obstacle course at SFAS? So at SFAS, you have to do the obstacle course called Nasty Nick, and it is a tough obstacle course. I think there's like 23 or 21 obstacles, decent amount, a couple rope climbs. And I remember the sketchiest obstacle for me inside the Nasty Nick is you have to, if you guys have ever climbed ropes in the military, it's usually tied to a thick log going across two other ones. So it's a cross beam. And on this particular obstacle, you have to climb the rope, and then you have to get over that log and then shimmy down another log. And I remember it was wet outside. I didn't have a good bite on the rope. I really didn't spend much time climbing a rope before getting into this environment, which was a mistake on my part. And I was like slipping and trying to, climb over this log. And I got to the point where I was basically like, I'm either going to fall 20 feet or I'm going to get over this freaking log. And luckily I got over it. But that is a pretty tough obstacle. And the biggest component of it, or it can be a tough obstacle if you don't have quality rope form. So all that to say, one of the biggest things that you can do to prepare for the obstacle course at SFAS is like nail down your rope climb form, whether you're using the S-wrap, the J-hook, whatever, the front lock. Like there's many different methods of climbing a rope. Whatever one works best for you and gives you the best bite and makes you most secure on the rope, do that. But you should get plenty of reps with that form prior to going to SFAS. Don't make SFAS, the first time you ever climbed a rope. I made the mistake of not necessarily, I climbed the rope a couple times using the S-wrap, and we had our recruiters show us the technique, but I never practiced it like in depth or got really comfortable with it. When I got to selection, obviously the ropes were a little bit wet that day. I was sucking, my grip was shot because I was using arms a lot. And I got to one of the last obstacles, and I was kind of running in place. You have to run in place if you're waiting for the guys in front of you on the obstacles. And I watched him use the technique that I hadn't seen before. Now I know it's called the J-hook, but I was like, man, that doesn't seem too hard. And then I used the J-hook on that rope, and it worked way better. So I am a big fan of using the J-hook method of climbing a rope. If you guys want to see a video breakdown on that, drop a comment down below and I can put it on the main YouTube channel. But getting really, really comfortable with the rope is one of the biggest things that you can do for the obstacle course. Also, we want to build up our stability with a lot of single leg work. This is going to build up our balance overall. And anytime we learn new movements like a single leg lunge, and when we build up strength in that, we are increasing our overall athleticism. Plyometrics are a great thing to do, which I got another question about plyometrics in just a minute. So plyometrics are great to drive up that athleticism, that proprioception, that balance that's going to help with those obstacles. But at the end of the day, there's nothing you can really do to replace getting on an obstacle course. So whoever asked this, if you are prior service or if you are in the military and you have access to one of the obstacle courses, even if it's like a super basic one on base, I do recommend getting out there and getting some exposure to it. Don't do the super sketchy obstacles if you don't have medical support around you or someone with you, but you can do like the balanced beam walks and things like that. Sometimes what I've seen a guy he got dropped. Unfortunately, he was a freaking solid candidate. I think he'd be a really good Green Beret, but he got dropped because he was on the ladder. So you climb up this thing and there's a ladder that you have to stand up on and walk down, and it's descending in elevation. And he was on the ladder, touched the yellow. There's like yellow paint on the rungs. He touched the yellow, so the cadre made him get down, restart the obstacle, and the cadre dropped him on his second attempt because he said that he looked fearful of heights. Was he afraid of heights? I don't know. But getting exposure to that, maybe getting out on a balance beam and just showing yourself how easy it is to do that balance stuff is a big confidence builder going to the obstacle course, because none of the obstacles are crazy and they teach you how to do them. They're not like super physically taxing or require you to be a freak level athlete, but doing it with a cadre next to you that is grading your performance and is the deciding factor on whether or not you become a Green Beret, something you always wanted to achieve, it can be very stressful. And that stress and performance anxiety often leads to us making mistakes because we stop focusing on what we're doing and we start thinking about all of the bad stuff that can happen. So get some exposure on the balance beams if able, but damn sure make sure you can climb a rope and your rope form is dialed in. Next question, what mental shifts / mindsets were most necessary to excel in selection and on a team? Kind of like what I talked about, the honeymoon aspect. The ability to continue to perform after that honeymoon phase of setting a big goal has dissipated or disappeared is one of the biggest mental shifts that you can take. So really expand your time horizon. There's a quote that I really like, which says that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 6 months, and we underestimate what we can accomplish in 5 years or 3 years or whatever, how many years you want to paint it. But the point of it is we think progress is going to come much faster, and real lasting performance takes many years. So that is one of the biggest mental shifts that I would encourage you guys to make. And that applies for when you do get to a team as well. When you get to a team, you're not going to know shit. Like, you just graduated the Q course. The Q course teaches you very, very basic information. And when you get to a team, you're going to start learning new information, which is actually applicable to the job through a fire hose. So expanding that time horizon, kind of that going into that reset and that constant learn mode, or that constant, someone who constantly seeks information, is something that is going to serve you very well in this environment. So expand your time horizon and be someone who is highly coachable and someone who loves to learn, and you're humble. And if you do those things, you will do just fine in special forces or the career overall on the performance or the mental performance side of it. Next question is how to incorporate plyometrics. So plyometrics are great for a couple things. One, they help us build power. When we do box jumps, like low rep, I'm not talking about box jumps like CrossFit box jumps where we just do it for a crazy amount of reps, but low rep, high intensity box jumps really help build power. And that is going to be very beneficial, not only on the obstacle courses, but inside of special forces in general. Also, plyometrics are really great for increasing our impact resistance. Things like depth jumps, things like lateral bounds. These are fantastic for getting that exposure on our tendons and ligaments to increase our resilience or our durability when we have to do those high impact movements. So plyometrics are really great for building power, really great for overall conditioning, and really great for athleticism, or what we call proprioception, which is just your body's understanding of where it exists in space. Your ability to command your body to do what it is you want it to do. And athletes have a very high level of this. So plyometrics are great to build those things. We like to include plyometrics in a couple different ways. Number one is at the beginning of a session when we are most fresh. If we are trying to build maximum power from plyometrics or build our ability to jump higher, exert more force, we don't want to do it at the end of a session when we are already fatigued from the lifting. So we will do that primarily in the beginning of that session, either right before the big lift. We might pair it with some core or carries or things like that right before the big lift, or we can even do a compound set with the big lifts. Like if you're doing trap bar deadlift, you can do a double broad jump or a broad jump immediately after that set, and that is still going to be quality for building that power. The big thing when we're focusing on power development is you want to take a rest. You're not going to feel like you need to take a rest. You probably do your 3 box jumps and feel fantastic, but taking a rest is going to ensure that you can push max effort on the subsequent sets so that you can get the stimulus that we're after. And then we can include plyometrics later in the session. Like CrossFit does this, or some other athletic style movements to build work capacity. Just understand that it's not going to build the power. So one of the things I see on Instagram all the time is the guys doing high rep lunge jumps, which high rep lunge jumps are great. You're going to smoke the shit out of your legs. It's going to feel good. I like them. And if we're doing a work capacity session where we're really focusing on our our ability to continue to move through that stress or push through that fatigue or that burn in our legs, it's a great thing to incorporate. But I often see guys doing that like after a session or during a smoke session and saying, hey, I'm building power with this. Like, no, you're really not, because you're so fatigued that the percentage of output is going to be very degraded as compared to your 100% maximum height, lunge jump. So you're not going to be getting a ton of power stimulus from it as far as like really increasing your ability to jump higher, be more explosive, but you are hitting work capacity, doing technically, plyometric type workouts. So typically we like to include them when we're most fresh. Sometimes we'll include, depends on the movement, to plyometrics inside of a work capacity session to build that fatigue resistance. But understand the difference so you can program them in there where you see best fit. All right. What is your experience with enablers? Is it a good transition to SF? So for those that don't know, an enabler is someone who is attached to group, so one of the Special Forces groups, but they're not a Green Beret. And you're going to make me rant on here, man. I think there should be some type of selection process for these individuals. Currently, there is not. Some groups are starting to incorporate a green platoon where after they are already assigned to that group, they might run them through a 4 to 6 week train up, give them some flat range time, make sure they can shoot, move, communicate, all of those things, medicate. So that is fantastic, but there's not a formal selection process like there is for direct support for Delta Force. But even with that, many of the enablers that I have actually worked with, like that were attached to our teams in Afghanistan or were embedded with us for a training operation, whatever, were fantastic. A lot of them are linguists who become SOT-A. I forget what the SOT-A acronym stands for, but they basically do electronic warfare type stuff, like listening to, signals intelligence, things like that. So, but the guys that I worked with were fantastic. Most of them linguists. We had some intel guys, attached to my team. We even had a hazmat guy attached to our team who was SSE, or sensitive site exploitation, qualified. So that's a value added on target, because they know what to search for when you're going through a target building. So all the guys that I worked with were fantastic. Now that doesn't mean all enablers or all, group support is great. A lot of times you'll hear, S1, S2, which is your like human resources and those type of functions. They take advantage a little bit of being in group, and maybe they'll be gone by 1500 and you need to get this stuff done on your SRB or ERB or whatever, so that, your teams aren't get off your back, but they keep closing by the time you get back from the range. So there are some frustrations with enablers or support personnel or kind of taking their job for granted in Special Forces, because they do get a lot more responsibility, or they get a lot more leeway than they would inside of a conventional Army unit. But the ones that I've seen attached to teams, linguists in particular, were always fantastic. And it is a pretty good transition into SF. A lot of times those guys won't go to selection because they've been embedded with it and they feel like they've done the job to the point where, it kind of scratched the itch for them. So you won't see a whole lot of previous enablers go to selection. But it is a good transition because you know the environment, you know the job, you've already worked with the guys, the temperaments, all that type of stuff. So if you can get that experience, it is a great way to do it. Looking back, I've talked about this many times on the podcast, but I joined with EOD originally. And looking back on, like, if I had to join the military today, based on the jobs that I've been exposed to throughout my career and my personal interests, the job I would choose would be linguist, because you get to go to DLI for a year and really learn to a high level a target language, which is going to help you tremendously when you go to selection. There's a lot of things we talk about in regard to, hey, the only thing at selection that matters is your performance, which is absolutely true. But if you are a good performer and you also happen to speak 2+, in Russian or a dialect of Arabic, Farsi, whatever, they're going to look at that. Like, this is a human game. And the things that SF guys do is train with a host nation military, train with a partner force, and the ability to speak the language is a fantastic value add. So that transitions directly into that environment. And then as a linguist, you can, fight. It's not going to be perfect, but you can try to get into group. And if you do get into group, you are going to be potentially serving as a side A and get attached to a team. So you'll be doing the job essentially as a Green Beret or of a Green Beret before you ever get to that environment. When I was in Afghanistan, I kind of traveled around a little bit. I came in as a new guy. Sergeant Major Sarter actually put me on the B team along with 3 other new guys that I came into country with. And we were just going to different teams, they were testing us out. I wasn't testing the teams out, but we were seeing which teams we clicked with most. The team I clicked with most was 1-1 up in Kunduz, which is northeast Afghanistan. And I remember the first time I flew into Camp Golan, it was called. Flew into Camp Golan. They have this like helipad, got off the back of the 47, the rotors are still turning, so there's dust flying everywhere. You don't really know where you're going. It was the middle of the night. I see a headlamp off in the distance, so I kind of just, walk over there, waddle over there with my bags. I'm in full kit, and I meet Dave, who is an awesome guy, and he's bearded up, jack dude, and I thought he was just like a normal, a member of the team. He showed me where everything was at, dropped my gear off, went into the team room, met the team sergeant and things like that. And he was kind of like the first impression I had. Well, it turns out he was a Sod A of the team. And for the first week I was there, because everyone's wearing civilian clothes, I thought he was like a senior 18 Echo, but he was an E4 Sod A living on this camp with a bunch of Green Berets and doing the same freaking job to the same level, pretty much. Like, fantastic guy. If he's listening to this, much love, but he was very highly capable and just blended in with the team. So that job is a good opportunity to get those types of experiences if they come up. Not 100% that you're going to get it, but you can always volunteer and trade, assignments or fight your way into there. All right. Who is your most influential role model or mentor? Man, this has really changed over the years. When I was first getting into the military, it was definitely my stepfather. He's still a great mentor of mine today. He was a Green Beret back in late 70s through the 80s, and then got out early 90s. So he did a lot of work down in South America. He worked, with he like boarded Soviet ships that he called porcupines. He worked inside the Cold War and things like that. So hearing those adventures or stories growing up and really digging into the questions, asking questions, what's it like to be a Green Beret, all that type of stuff. He was kind of like the first real mentor I ever had. Up until that point, my mom was primarily a single mom. My dad, my biological father, has never been really a part of my life. So he was like the first male role model that I had, aside from a football coach that I never talk about anything outside of football. So that was, one of the biggest mentors I've had in my life is my stepfather. As the years go on, it depends on what I'm pursuing. If I'm pursuing a career in special forces, the mentor that I choose would look different than if I'm trying to start a business. I think and I believe that we should be seeking mentors or seeking guidance from the individuals that have walked our specific path before. I'm not saying individuals that haven't walked your path can't assist you and help you get there, but there's so many nuances associated with it that we want to leverage the experience of others as much as we possibly can. And one of the best ways to do that is find someone who has walked your particular route that you want to go. So as I kind of progressed, had some mentors inside the military. One of them was a warrant officer when I was in the 160th that kind of took me under his wing. And then when I got to group, I felt like I was mentored by more of a group of individuals, primarily CJ and Chris. CJ is a coach with Infinite Grit now. He is transitioning out of the military currently. And then Chris was my senior 18 Charlie. So those guys like really showed me a ton when I first got to a team. And then, now it's my mentors are more towards like building a business and doing stuff with Infinite Grit, how to create content. So like the mentors of my entire life have kind of transitioned as I've gotten into different paths. And I think that is a beneficial way to do it. Obviously, if you have a mentor that is like with you and understands all your goals, fantastic. But what I found is sometimes a mentor that is highly capable in this particular area might not provide the most useful and actionable guidance for something else you're trying to pursue. So always seek guidance from those that have walked the path that you want to go down. What is the best form of training once on a team? The bro split or continuing with this athletic style of training? Bro split is seldom the best training that, training form or form of training that you can do. It is one that a lot of guys do when they get to a team. You'll see this when you get to the Q course. That like once you're going through selection, you're focused on speed, getting run and ruck times down, high endurance capacity, rucking, things like that. When guys get to the Q course, oftentimes you'll see guys say, hey, have kind of like I made it type of thing. And they'll jump on a SARM stack, put on 15, 20 pounds of muscle, and they become a different person throughout the Q course experience. It's fine if you can still run and ruck, but the problem that you usually see is they'll put on all that mass throughout the entirety of the course when you're not really being tested on PT tests or anything like that. And then when they get to language, they get hit with a 2 or 5 mile PT test and then struggle to make their times. So I would say to the individuals going to the Q course, before I touch on the team, continue to train, because when you show up to your team, you want to be the fittest guy there. And coming out of the Q course, there's not really a whole lot of excuses for not being the fittest guy there, because Green Berets don't have the most ideal training environments. They're going from one school to another. They're going to be spending time in the field, eating MREs, going on deployments, whatever, battling injuries. You're not going to have a perfect training environment where you can just really maximize performance inside of Special Forces. But when you're in language school and you're on the backside of the Q course, or you have a couple months before you even report to your team, you should be using that time to get very fit. So you show up to your team, one of the fittest guys there. And that is going to look really good to your team sergeant, and it's going to open up a lot of opportunities for you. So after you get through the Q course, after you get through selection, continue to train. It doesn't need to be like selection prep style training. It can be a little bit more focused on durability, but we should damn sure be making sure that your run times are low, because that is going to look really good and legitimately open up opportunities for you when you get to group. Once you're on a team, the training will change. You do have a lot of resources there. They have Thor 3. I can't speak for the other groups, but 10th group just built a fantastic new facility that I'm super jealous that I wasn't able to experience before I left. But you have a lot of resources there that can help you build plans specifically to what you want to achieve. If you want to put on some additional muscle mass while still maintaining conditioning, you can do that. Now, I would not just go straight 6-day push-pull legs or bro split, hypertrophy or bodybuilding style focus when you get to a team. You still need to be making sure that you are focusing and including the things that you're going to be required to do. You don't need to go out there and try to push down for a 12:30 or 11-minute 2 mile. You don't need to, go crazy with that stuff, but you should damn sure make sure you can carry a pack and move with your kit. When you get to group, there's not a whole lot of guys that continue to run like crazy, but you should be rucking, you should be carrying a pack. Personally, I did 4 to 5 strength days. I did get focused more on hypertrophy when I got to a team, which I kind of kick myself now because I admittedly developed some imbalances because of that. So make sure if you are trying to build muscle and you want to focus more on hypertrophy, that's fine, but don't neglect the things that got you to perform in that environment in the first place, which is a common mistake and leads to a lot of injuries with that. So I did 4 or 5 strength building workouts per week. We usually spend a bunch of time on the range running around in kit. So I honestly didn't do a whole lot of conditioning, but I would go hunt and carry a pack through the mountains in Colorado over the weekend. So that served as a lot of my conditioning training. And then if it was out of season, whatever, I was usually hopping on the bike, doing, running hills. I had a hill right by my house, lived up on a mountain. So a lot of, more low impact or different styles of conditioning than just running. Personally, I kind of got burnt out of just running for years and I wanted to do some of this other stuff. And I ran it for about 2 years and then I took a PT test. And I think my first PT test after not really running, just rucking and maintaining conditioning, I got like a 13:10. So I lost 20 seconds off of my 2-mile time. I was completely cool with that. So your training is going to change when you get to a team. It's going to be much more focused on just being able to carry a pack, move with your kit on, be explosive, get over walls, be athletic for the different environments that you're going to be required to perform in, but much less focus on like, hey, we need you to have this crazy 2 and 5 mile time. You still want to maintain them, of course. Never want to just completely, disregard them and get out of shape with it, but much more focused on the demands that you're actually going to be required to do as a Green Beret. And running is really not one of them in combat. You might do sprints or something like that, but most of the time you're going to be doing an offset. Helicopter drops you off and you're just walking low and slow for hours on end, get to the village, clear it, you retrograde back to another helicopter landing zone and get picked up. So it's very low and slow, kind of like endurance capacity, and the ability to carry weight. So other than that, that's all the questions we got this week. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Like I said, if you guys have questions, drop them down in the comments, shoot me a message on Instagram. And then if you are looking for custom programming, that is exactly what we do all day long, is help guys train for special operations. There's a link to that down below as well. Appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you in the next podcast. Have a great week and go get after it.